Hello, I'm Angela Wamboy, and welcome to Capital Online TV News. Here's a look at the day's top stories. The Supreme Court ruling now shows that the August 8th presidential election was marred by what Chief Justice David Maraga has described as massive systematic irregularities that compromise the outcome. Maraga, who while reading the detailed ruling of the September 1st decision of the Supreme Court, which nullified the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta, said the six-judge bench of the Apex Court was convinced beyond reasonable doubt that the election was not conducted as stipulated in law.
The presidential election of 8 August 2017 did not meet the symbol test, and we are unable to validate it, the results notwithstanding.
Deputy Chief Philomena Ngilu, who read the first part of the detailed judgment earlier Wednesday afternoon, highlighted how the Electoral Commission misread key provisions of the Electoral Act.
Having therefore carefully considered all the affidavit evidence and submissions of counsel for all the parties, we find and hold that the petitioners herein have discharged the legal burden of proving that the second respondent declared the final results for the election of the president before the first respondent had received all the results from Forms 34A from all the 40,883 polling stations, contrary to the Constitution and to the applicable law. We also find and hold that the second respondent declared the said results solely on the basis of Forms 34B, some of which were of dubious authenticity. We further find that the first respondent, in disregard of the provisions of Section 39(1)(c) of the Elections Act, either failed or neglected to electronically transmit in the prescribed form the tabulated results of an election of the president from many polling stations to the National Tallying Center.
Supporters of Jubilee and NASA camping outside the Supreme Court were forced to flee after a swarm of bees descended on them as the judges were reading the final Supreme Court ruling. At least one person stung by the bees was rushed to hospital following the incident that also sent police and journalists running to safety. There were varied explanations on the sources of the bees, while others claiming they may have been taken there by a group of supporters, while others say they were descended on them from a beehive on an electricity pole. At one point, police were forced to lob tear gas at the crowd outside the Supreme Court during a clash between the Jubilee and NASA supporters. Kitui East Member of Parliament Nimrod Bai has apologized to Kitui Governor Ngilu over his call to rape remark that he made last month at a political rally. He spoke Wednesday for the first time after the remarks during an interview with the vernacular radio station, where he has regretted his remarks, saying he has a huge respect for the NARC leader. The first-time MP says he is set to work closely with Governor Ngilu, saying her track record is commendable. Bai, who clinched the parliamentary seat through a Jubilee Party ticket, has been roundly criticized following the remarks, although Ngilu has not commented on the issue. And finally, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission has postponed a meeting with the Jubilee Party and the National Super Alliance to allow for more time for consideration of issues arising from a detailed Supreme Court ruling. Commission Chairperson Wafula Chebukati said in a dispatch to newsrooms that the decision to have the scheduled meeting postponed was made after consultations with both parties. Chebukati also said the decision was reached in foresight that the detailed ruling would inform discussions on preparations for the fresh presidential election slated for October 17th. The poll agency gazetted President Uhuru Kenyatta of Jubilee and his NASA counterpart Raila Odinga as the only candidates for the fresh poll. And that's a wrap-up of the day's top stories. I'm your host, Angela Wamboy. For more on these and other stories, log on to www.capitalfm.co.ke/tv.